Hello everyone, and welcome to Module 1 of the HAudio Method Essentials program, Applied Mindfulness and Micro-Tracking Techniques for Embodied Transformation, with Manuela Mishka-Reeds and Rob Fisher, titled Overview of the HAudio Method. This is your host, Colleen at the Shift Network. We are excited to get going, yes, but first I do have a few orientation details to share with you. So I invite you to get comfortable. Since some of you may have been on calls with us before, and some of you may be brand new, please allow me a few moments to get everyone on the same page so we ensure you all have what you need to take best advantage of the course. You should have received a course orientation email the day you registered, which contains a link where you can confirm your email address and ensure you receive future course emails. Throughout the course, you will receive 2 emails every week directly from the Shift Network. An email before the call, which will contain the details for the upcoming call, and then an email following that will contain the deepening practices that help support you in the integration of your course materials. Please locate and bookmark your course homepage. Your course homepage will contain all of the recordings and the transcripts and course materials, along with information on several ways to connect to the live calls. The course homepage can be found by following the link provided in any of the emails just mentioned. Also, please note that you will need to click on the title of each week's call, or click on what we call the golden open button next to each week's call to access the course recordings and transcripts. So today, for Module 1, you'd want to click on that open button and have the 2 files ready to go when we will need them for class today. Most additional course material and bonuses can be found in the supplemental section, which is at the very bottom of the course homepage. Lastly, you will receive 2 emails from Maestro Conference 24 hours and 2 hours prior to each course call. These reminders include your personal PIN number and your phone number for dialing into the conference, and some information about the platform we use for our courses. If you dialed in by phone or web phone today, you're on the Maestro Conference platform, and Maestro is the technology that allows us to converse back and forth. You will be prompted to participate by pressing numbers on your phone's keypad, such as pressing 1 to ask a question, or by pressing 4 to join a breakout group. As you will learn as we go along, if you need any technical assistance, then you would press 5 on your keypad, and then I will come along and assist you. We also provide an audio webcast, which allows you to interact by typing questions into the message box. Please know that you cannot participate in any live breakout groups from the webcast, and if you are using it and you'd rather use Maestro Conference, you can find many choices on the top right-hand side of your course homepage, giving you, for example, a web phone choice and different ways to connect without necessarily using a telephone. If you have any questions at all and you are on the webcast, please type them directly into the message box, and please include your email address so we can reply by email. If you are new to online learning, we understand this can be a lot of information. So if you have any questions and are in need of support, please do contact our customer support team by visiting our website at support.theshiftnetwork.com. It is such a great opportunity for me to host this course and be here with all of our multidimensionalities, body, mind, and heart. Each week we will be led by one of our 2 master faculty, either by Manuela Mishka-Reeds or Rob Fisher. For our first session today, we will be led by Manuela. A meditation practitioner for over 25 years, Manuela lectures, consults, trains professionals in mindfulness, attachment, trauma, and movement therapy. She co-directs the HAudio Institute of California and teaches across the U.S., Europe, and Australia, and fortunately for us here across the globe at the Shift Network. A warm welcome to you, Manuela.
Thank you very much, Colleen, for that wonderful introduction. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I'm very thrilled to have you all join the HAudio Essentials course of 2016. And I'm very thrilled that there are so many of you that have signed up and are joining us for those 10 weeks for learning about the HAudio Essentials with Rob and myself. And today is going to be, I'm going to spend a little bit of time to kind of orient you about the course and how we work it and how we teach it. And then I'm going to guide you through a short mindfulness practice. And then I'm going to jump right into teaching you about the HAudio methods and give you the big arc of the course. And then I'm going to guide you through a deepening practice that you're going to be debriefed with each other after we get off the phone with me for about 30 minutes after the call. And that's going to be each week you're going to have a deepening practice, and that's a chance for you to be in small groups and meet each other and have us kind of butt out. So that's always a nice part of the class as well. So please stay with that, because that's really the whole arc of the class really includes that 30 minutes afterwards as well. So I want to just tell you a little bit about who we are and kind of orient you to the class. That I'm one of the directors of the HAudio Institute of California, and I've been teaching the HAudio method for over 20 years. And this class will be taught by myself and Rob Fisher, who's also co-directing the HAudio Institute of California, and has equally been on the teaching circuit. And we both teach internationally, not just in California, but all over the globe, really, Germany and recently China and New Zealand, Australia, and Japan, you name it, a lot of different places, and had the fortune to be teaching this wonderful method to many different cultures and groups, and it has been so warmly received. And the request to teach it with this wonderful organization, Shift Network, really came out of HAudio having such a global presence and people around the globe wanting to have access to HAudio where we haven't been able to travel to. So this is our gift and our intro, really, to teaching HAudio globally, and give you a glimpse, an in-depth glimpse, though, into what the HAudio method is about, and hopefully you will be inspired to be doing more teaching, learning about the teachings of HAudio near where you are. My particular interest in HAudio started many, many years ago. I was a student of meditation. I was a student of dance therapy and was interested in somatic psychology, and came across the HAudio method and fell in love with it and really never let go of it. For me, it embodied a comprehensive methodology in which the client could discover who they are in a very essential way. And HAudio has such a gentle way about it, which I'm going to talk to you about, but also has these principles in which I feel like every human being can discover themselves. And HAudio is very method-friendly with other methodologies. So it's a lot of people who practice the HAudio method are also CBT practitioners, or come from bodywork or acupuncture or psychiatry, or you name it. We have quite a big cross-fertilization with other disciplines, and I really think that HAudio is not just a method of psychotherapy, but it really is a way of looking at the world, being with the world, and being with one another. So once you kind of get into HAudio, you realize, oh, that's really how I want to live my life. That's at least what happened to me, and I'm sure Rob would say the same thing. So what we have designed for you here is that each week we have a PDF that's uploaded on your home page, course page, and ideally, if you can, you want to follow it along. Now, I'm aware that some of you cannot join at the live time. Of course, if you can, please make that time available. It's so much more dynamic when we have you all here and we can talk to each other and ask questions, and I can guide you through it in real time. But obviously I understand that you might be listening at other times. But what you want to do is you do want to have the PDF open so you can follow along. When I go into the lecture, I'm going to go through those slides, and I'm going to indicate to you which slides I'm going to be talking about. And having the visual there, I think, really helps, especially if there's graphs and so on. So please follow along with that once we get going in it. And then usually we will start our class with a short meditation. HAQOMI is a mindfulness-based experiential psychotherapy, and so we're very big on giving you experiential pieces. So you're not just hearing us talk about HAQOMI, but we're giving you a feel and a sense for how the method is operating within you. It is kind of odd to be teaching it in this quote, disembodied way over the web and over the phone, because HAQOMI is such a relational, embodied practice and method. But yet we found last year, teaching it this way, it was very, very potent, and students got a lot out of it. And I was very surprised of how much we could transmit. And part of it is doing the meditations and the experiential pieces. So even if you're not on real time on the call, please make the time to go through the meditations with us, and also spend some time afterwards really reflecting on the deepening practice. We did have some design in mind when we planned all this. And then Rob and I am going to be alternating, not equally back and forth, but I'm going to start out this week, and then Rob is going to come to meet you next week, and then I'm coming back, and then Rob is going to take about 3 or 4 classes in a row, that he's going to be teaching, and then I'm going to take the next 3. So you're going to have a back and forth with us in the beginning, and then you're going to have a chunk with Rob where you're going to be deepening, and then you're going to have a chunk with me that you're going to be deepening. And part of it is that we both have our specialties and our in-depth knowledge about an arena of the method that you really want to take advantage of. Rob is a master of couples work and relational work, and so you really want to kind of get his brain and thoughts. He's quite wonderful in this and world-renowned in his couples work. And then my specialty is about trauma and stress, and I want to have some time really digging in with you, kind of understanding how do we work with trauma and stress, which is so prevalent in our work, in our culture today, and give you the HAQOMI perspective of how we work with it, and in particular, how I have been working with it since that's been my specialty. So each week we also have readings, and if you are able, we highly recommend the HAQOMI book, which is called The HAQOMI Mindfulness-Centered Somatic Psychotherapy, and it was released last year and is really the latest HAQOMI writing, which is a compilation of all the HAQOMI trainers around the globe that have contributed chapters. And it's really the most newest thinking about HAQOMI, and we highly recommend that you get this book and that there are chapters to be reading with each class. We understand that if you can't get your hand on it, we understand it, and of course you'll do your best. And we do have, that's why we have the handouts and for each week. And at the bottom of the supplemental, there's also the entire course handouts in one PDF form, so you can read through that and get a lot out as well. But certainly the HAQOMI book would make a big difference. For today's class, there are 2 YouTube clip videos that is also listed for you, and they're by Ron Kurtz, who is the founder of the HAQOMI method. And I think it'd be wonderful for you, since we're today starting about the overview of HAQOMI, that you get a flavor of who the founder was and get to hear his voice and see him. And they're short little 6-minute videos that give you a glimpse into who he is and who he was. Actually, he passed away about 3 years ago. But he really is the founder and set the whole HAQOMI work in motion, and it'd be nice for you to get a feel for who he is. So I think that's it for the orientation, and I'm wondering if there's any question on the structure orientation that you would like to have answered. Colleen, is there anybody that has their hand up?
Well, I'd like to just let everyone know how they can ask a question. So please press 1 on your telephone keypad, and we'll see that you'd like to ask a question. And if you are on the webcast, please type directly into the webcast box there, and we will see your question. Well, Beverly was asking from the webcast, please repeat the title of the book, and I just wanted to let Beverly know that at the very bottom of the course homepage is a link to the book, and I've also posted a link to it on the course community group. But please, if you could share once again the title of the book with us, Manuela.
Sure. It's called the HAudio Mindfulness-Centered Somatic Psychotherapy. HAudio Mindfulness-Centered Somatic Psychotherapy. And it's been published by Norton, 2015. And the editors are Weiss, Johansson, and Monda. And all that information, as Colleen was saying, is actually on you find everything that I just said on the course homepage. I know it's a little bit unnerving when you first come to a web course. There's so much to kind of juggle, but literally everything that we're telling you is there. So you might want to spend some time after today's class and click on everything and get familiar so that it becomes second nature to you in the following classes. But every week, when you click on the module, there will always be a presentation, and there are PDF files that you can either click on, download, and then you can follow along, which is basically a PowerPoint presentation that we've converted into a PDF file, so it's easier for you to scroll through it. But make sure that when you come to the classes, just have that PDF open, have that presentation open, and then you're ready to go with the teacher. And as Colleen was saying, at the very bottom, the supplemental material, beneath it is highly recommended reading at the very, very bottom of the page, and there's the title of the book and the link. Okay? So I'm going to assume that you're – go ahead. Go ahead, Colleen.
I just had Natalie also had called into the webcast, not called in, I don't mean to confuse her, she typed a message, and she really has a question. So I'd like to give her an opportunity again to see if we hear her.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Natalie, go ahead, please. You have the mic now.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly now.
Oh, great. Wonderful. You mentioned 2 videos that we're going to be watching. I'm not seeing the videos in the materials. They're only PDFs that are in the Module 1 folder. And so where do we see those 2 videos?
They should be in there. You know what? If they're not, I'll have the staff send out the links for afterwards. They're for afterwards anyway. So I'll make sure you guys get an email with those links. Thank you for
beautiful.
Yes. Thank you. They're for homework basically anyhow, but I'll send them to you.
Thank you, Manuela.
Okay. All right.
And Natalie.
So let's get going. So if you can please, if you haven't done it so, I'm sure you're furiously clicking on your course homepage, but please open up Module 1, Overview of the HAudio Method, and click on the HAudio Method Overview Presentation. So there are 3, as you see the download class materials, there are 3 items there. One is the presentation, which we're going to have open right now. The other one is basically a supplemental handout, which is called the Origins of HAudio. It's just for you, some extra stuff to read. And the deepening practice is what we're going to do at the end of the class, and which you're going to be doing after the class finishes or continue it. So there's always going to be 3 or 4 items each week for you to do that pertains to the class at hand. Okay, so let's jump ahead. Or jump in, not ahead. Let's jump in and talk a little bit about what is this HAudio thing. What is the HAudio method? So if you open up your presentation slide, there should be one that has a photo of me. You can see how I'm looking. Hello. And if we get savvy enough, I might, one of those classes, even try Facebook Live, one of those classes. You can see me kind of live too. Might be fun rather than a static photo, so you don't think I'm wearing the same jacket for 10 weeks straight. Okay, so the HAudio method. Let's talk a little bit about the overview and the flow of the method and what HAudio is, so I can give you a little bit of a frame. If you go to slide 2, HAudio Institute is literally in 12 countries or more, and we're growing. We are literally all over the U.S. We're in Australia. I just actually returned from there. New Zealand, Mexico, Japan, China, Canada, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Spain, Israel. We're in a lot of countries. And in the U.S., we are across the U.S. as well, and we work in different teams. And Rob and I are from the HAudio Institute of California. We're based in the Bay Area, Northern California, and we have a large teaching team of 12 people here. And we run a lot of HAudio trainings, comprehensive trainings, skill trainings for professionals. We also have lots of trainings that are specialty trainings of Hakomi, such as couples work, and we have a trauma training and attachment training, and also a recreation of the self training. So we have lots of offerings, and if you go to the HakomiInstitute.org, which is the international kind of clearinghouse, you can see all the offerings of the Hakomi Institute. And if you go to HakomiCalifornia.org, you see what we offer in California. And you can click around and see all the other offerings in other countries as well. So there is Hakomi probably near you if you want it. But Hakomi, if you go to the next slide, Hakomi was founded by a gentleman named Ron Kurtz, who I said was passed away about 3-4 years ago. And he was the founder of the method, and this happened in the 70s. And Ron Kurtz was a very innovative and very open-minded gentleman at the time. He kind of brought together and studied from Ericksonian therapy, systems thinking. He was interested in family systems thinking. He also dabbled in Neo-Reichian and biodynamics and all kinds of different somatic therapies that are really sprouting up in the late 60s and 70s. And it was a time in psychology where people were searching for new ways of working. And Ron was right there at the forefront. And at that time, he was surrounded by some founding members, and some of them teaching today at the Institute still, that were around him. And that group of people really kind of sat down with him and began to extrapolate what it was that he was doing with his clients, because his method had such a different flavor from what had been done until then. If you know anything about the history of psychology at that time, it was very popular. The psychoanalytic world was very popular, but also the encounter and very expressive therapies were very popular. And Hakomi was very, very different at that time. It did exactly the opposite. Rather than what Ron used to call raising the signal, which is making things more obvious or louder, he lowered the noise. Is what we call it, and this is a metaphor that we use from the radio. You know, when you have a lot of static when you listen to a radio, rather than cranking up the radio, you're going to have a lot of static. But if you actually dial it down a little bit, the voice of the announcer or what you want to listen to becomes clearer because you're lowering the noise. And what we refer to as lowering the noise is bringing mindful awareness to the process. So by going inside, by studying your experience, by kind of quietening everything inside and outside, there's a way that we can begin to lower the noise, and then we can hear the signal, what's actually wanting to happen inside, more clearly. And so at that time when Ron was kind of developing this method, it was a kind of radical move away from making things more obvious or louder or expressive, which of course has a wonderful place. There's nothing against that. But he had a different way of going into the psyche and the body, of really thinking, how can I quieten the chatter of the mind? How can I quieten the external preoccupations so I can really listen to what's occurring deep inside the person? And isn't there an intelligence unfolding as I listen deeply into this person? So that was kind of one of the tenets that he brought into the method. And so he began to work, and then these senior Hakomi therapists around him began to document and write, and he was a prolific writer as well, Ron, and began to really form what this method was about. And if you go to the next slide, the word Hakomi is a Hopi word. And there's a wonderful story. That apparently a bunch of these founding members were together. And you know, the stories get better every year as you hear them, as you retell them too. But the story goes that these people were together and they were thinking about, how should we name this new body of psychotherapy? What should it be called? And one member in the group had a dream that night in which he was handed a blank piece of paper, and on that piece of paper was the name Hakomi, Hakomi. And he brought that the next morning to the group and said, look, I got this dream, and I think we should be calling ourselves Hakomi. And everybody's like, what is Hakomi? Is this a flower arrangement? Is this like a Japanese food? Or what is this? And then one member said, I think it's something Native American. And so the story goes that this gentleman drove for 6 hours to his house through some treacherous snowstorm, and then went to his house and pulled up a book off his bookshelf and opened it up, and sure enough, Hakomi is a Hopi word, and it means how do you stand in relation to those many realms? How do you stand in relation to those many realms? And the modern translation is, who are you? And so the members really felt like this was a perfect name for the method, because really what this method was beginning to shape up to was looking at who is this person at the deepest level. Who are they and how are they putting themselves together? How, the language that we use now is say, how does the person organize themselves? And so we're looking at how does the person organize themselves in relation to their intimate relationships, in relation to their body, in relation to their thoughts, in relation to their sensate experience, in relation to others, to the world, and so on. So it was a very fitting name, and it kind of stuck, and people kind of wanted to continue it. So this is how we got the name. And the whole tenet, if you go to the next slide 5, is that the idea is, as we're looking at how is the person standing in relation to their realms of experience, that the answers are deep inside you. And this is where Ron began to really look at Taoism and Buddhism and into mindfulness and meditation. And he began, and at that time you have to understand, at that time mindfulness wasn't as hip as it is now. Now we've gone on experiencing this mindfulness revolution, and it's this wonderful branching out where we begin to have mindfulness in many methodologies and in hospitals and so on. But at that time, using mindfulness in psychotherapy was really radical. And the idea that you turn inside and that you listen to the answers that are deep inside of you was not exactly a going method. So Ron was really seeing something and experiencing something with his clients and his students that was very new. And I think even to this day, even though there is so much mindfulness use right now, not many methods are really including mindfulness as a way of working to get to the depths of the unconscious. There's often the use of mindfulness as an addendum or as a way to calm the mind, which is referred to in meditation as shamatha, calming the mind, but not really as a vehicle to study one's experience. So the next slide is a quote from Ron Kurtz. He says, people are different from machines. They are organisms, self-creating, self-organizing, self-maintaining, and they heal. And what that points us towards is that in order to heal, we need to look at how do we organize and how do we create and how do we basically maintain our patterns and how do we have the avenues and pathways to heal ourselves. We cannot understand our own healing until we understand the patterns and what we call belief systems, or other methodologies referred to as schemas. We cannot fully understand who we are until we understand what are some of the belief systems that govern us. And so if you go to the next slide, this is a quote from one of the senior trainers, one of the co-founders, John Eisman. He says, while the conscious mind is telling the story, the unconscious is commenting with body information. So the conscious mind is always having a narrative, yes? And we have a story that we identify with. We have a story that who we are, what we're going to do, how it was, and our plans in the future. And we have that running narrative that we very closely identify with. And yet we have an unconscious commenting with the body, the tight shoulder, the clenched fists, the tightness in the face, the queasiness in the belly, the quiver in the jaw, right? There's all kinds of sensations. The body is constantly having a response to our world, to our interior world, and to our story. And so what we're looking at in Hakomi is we're looking at, yes, what is the conscious mind telling us, the story, but that's usually the identification and a very small sliver of who we are. And more importantly, we're looking at Hakomi, what are the unconscious comments? What are the signals of the body that is truly telling us what's going on? I could be saying I'm doing great, and yet my shoulders are hunched to my ears, which tell a very different story. Perhaps my eyes are wide open, my shoulders are hunched forward and up, my jaw is clenched. What would you read in that? Probably a tense person or a nervous person or a person that's uneasy to be here with you. So although I'm telling you I'm fine, the unconscious body story tells me something very different. And the reason that that's important is that when we begin what we call tracking, and you're going to learn a lot about that next time with Rob, when you're learning how to track the unconscious, what we call the cues of the unconscious or the cues of the storyteller, you begin to unravel a very different story, and that's the true story, which guides us to the core beliefs. And once we have understanding of what the core beliefs are, how we got to create them, what kind of core beliefs govern us, we begin to understand the kind of suffering and pain that we carry, and then we have a chance to look at what can we do different. Because most of the core beliefs that we're governed by, we're actually rather not aware of. We're rather unconscious about it. So understanding the body information, the cues and the unconscious cues are very, very critical in the HAudio work. And all our training goes towards really becoming a very fine tracker to understand those cues and follow them to the depths of the unconscious so we can begin to unravel those core beliefs. Now, it sounds good, right? And it sounds powerful, and it is. And we can do that very quickly, actually. And you might want to go to slide 8. And it is very powerful and fast as you're tracking the body. A skilled HAudio therapist can tell in about 3 to 5 minutes some of the core beliefs of the person if they're tracking right. But we do this with the principles in mind. And this is really critical. The HAudio principles are the container of the work. And I just told you that you can track somebody's body cues very fast and very directly. But if you do them without the principles, it's rather aggressive and violent. I can point out to somebody that tight shoulder. I can point out to somebody the quivering jaw or how they look anxious or scared. But if I do it without the principles, it's going to come across as brass. It's going to come across as very aggressive and rather exposing. And if you do that with somebody who is traumatized or have very deep woundings about the ambivalence about being seen or the difficulty of being safe with others or in their own bodies, you're going to have about one session and one session only because the person is going to be running out of the room feeling completely naked. So it is learning how to track the body cues and learning how to track the cues of the unconscious is a very, very powerful tool. But it's almost like you have to take a kind of oath not to do harm, because you can do harm if you don't use it within the principles. So let me give you a little overview of the principles. And I know that you're going to have more as we go along. But we have these core principles: unity, organicity, mind, body, spirit, holism, applied mindfulness, and nonviolence. And these are the core principles of HAudio. And unity relates to this incredible interrelatedness of all things, that everything is interconnected. And you can hear there the Taoist and Buddhist influence. There's the awareness that the client and I are in this interconnected web. It's not random that we met. And it's also not random that you and I are on the call together. There's something that drew you to HAudio, something that you kind of resonated with or perhaps even feel at home with already. A lot of people have that experience. And there is a unity principle that we're in this interconnected web of all things, and nothing happens without that kind of relationship. So in the example I said of being brass or aggressive towards a client, if I do that, it's going to have consequences. And within the unity principle, our interrelatedness and my aggression towards the client is going to have an impact. They perhaps withdraw. They perhaps go away from the relationship. So it's going to have a direct impact because we're interrelated. Organicity is a principle that honors each person's individual. And it follows the unfolding, as we say, the unfolding of the client's process. We're really big on unfolding as the client wants to. So we're trusting. Remember I said the answers are deep inside each client. And we're trusting this very, very explicitly. And our job as the HAudio therapist is to basically excavate the depth in which the client can meet themselves. And organicity helps us to go there. So we're trusting what unfolds. And you probably have heard the phrase, trusting the process. So we trust the process as it unfolds. Nothing that happens in the therapy session is for waste or wrong. We look at it, we go with it, we trust it, we see where this wants to go. And one of the images you might have, and Rob is going to talk more about that to you, is you probably know the Russian nesting dolls, the babushkas. You open one doll and there's another one in there, and then you open that one, there's another one and another one. So think of the process of Hakomi as this peeling of the onion or the opening of these babushka dolls, and you're opening to deeper and deeper and deeper layer of the person. And we do that with this utmost kindness and trust in the person unfolding this way as they're kind of revealing layer after layer after layer. And with that, we're respecting those layers as they appear. So nothing that the client reveals, including resistance. We're going to have a class on that. We're really big on really appreciating resistance. We know that resistance is the royal road to the core material. So we'll honor all of those places. It's not a problem in our view. The other important element is the mind, body, spirit holism. So all elements, all parts of us, our body, our heart, our mind, all of it, our spirituality, who we are in all of us is accepted and brought in. There's not a dimension of our human experience that we're excluding, and it's very important because the mind and the body are interconnected. Another value is applied mindfulness. So we work in the state of consciousness of mindfulness. Right now, we are what we call ordinary consciousness. So I'm talking to you, you're listening as a student, and you're thinking, and you're doodling, or you're following the talk, and you're using your ordinary mindfulness. But if I ask you to shift your mind, and I'm going to do that in a minute with you, to a more mindful way of being, you're going to access a different state of awareness. And in Hakomi, we spend a lot of time shifting from ordinary consciousness into mindfulness consciousness. And we believe that in the mindfulness consciousness is where we actually are going to be discovering and accessing and going into the depth of the human experience without that habitual story I was referring to earlier. You actually begin to go underneath the story, and you begin to discover who the storyteller is that has created the story from those belief systems. So mindfulness is a very, very important piece of the work, very critical. And the last principle is nonviolence. So there's this deep respect to not push the client beyond what they are capable of or what they want to do. I might be tracking a cue that seems really important to me, and the client is not interested in it, then I won't go there. So we're following the organicity, we're following what the client has what we call juice for, what they have interest for, because we know that when the client is really curious about something, we're going to find an in-depth way in. And truthfully, all roads lead to Rome. It doesn't really matter where we start. If we go with the aliveness and the curiosity of the client, we will go to the core beliefs. So we truly believe in not having an agenda as a therapist. We are informed. We have an idea about the process. We know how to what we call shepherd the process. But what then unfolds within the process is really up to the curiosity of the client. Yeah? And we will talk much more about that. And there's a couple of essential ingredients that we take with us. One of them is kindness. There's a warmth that we have as a Hakomi therapist. And the other one is a very loving presence, we call it. So the therapist sits in loving regard towards the client. And it's actually a practice that we engage and train with because we believe that everything heals within relationship. And if I'm, as a therapist, am not most open and in my most loving place to my clients, I can't really, inspire them and hold them fully and guide them into those sensitive places. So the loving presence is absolutely critical for the therapist to sit in. And it creates this atmosphere of acceptance and love and kindness, which, to start with, is about 50% of all healing wounds right there, right? Most people come to therapy and have some kind of woundedness about being discarded, not heard, not accepted, not loved or appreciated. So the nonviolence principle is very, very important. Not pressing in an agenda is critical, and following the flow of the client's curiosity. So those are the Hakomi principles. So before we go further, I want to have us dip in for one moment into a mindfulness moment, because I want to kind of show you that shift from the ordinary consciousness to the mindfulness state. So take a moment, if you will, and wherever you're sitting, just take a moment to sit upright and shift your orientation for a moment from listening to a lecture to listening to a mindfulness instruction. So feel your posture, and ideally you have your hips underneath your shoulder girdle and the base of your skull above and aligned with your shoulder girdle and your hips. You can have your legs cross-legged or on the floor, it doesn't matter. Just take a moment to feel the physical posture. So you're aligning yourself into this beautiful, still but dynamic posture. And then if you're comfortable, you can either cast your eyes down or you can close them. It's not important that you close them if you're not comfortable. And as you are casting your eyes and you're withdrawing a little bit from the input from the world, begin to bring your attention to your inner world for a moment. And it's always good to start by scanning the posture from the inside, feeling how your body is right now, tuning into the breath and the quality of the breath. So you're letting the attention that you just had outward draw inside, and you're shifting your awareness to the interior landscape. As you're shifting, begin to notice what arises as you're slowing down. Perhaps you're noticing the rhythm of your breath. And you're not really doing anything, but what you're doing is you're allowing the attention to arrive and become coherent with the body as it is right now. So you're aligning where the body is with the attention that you had outside just now to the inside. So feeling that shifting to the interior world. Feeling your breath rising and falling. Beginning to observe your experience. So that simple attention shift, the inside, and beginning to observe now. Let that be the main action. And so you're feeling and sensing into what's arising in this moment. So get really curious. Again, the rise and the fall of the breath is very helpful. And you might notice as you're doing this that you're beginning to slow a little bit. There's a quality of timelessness perhaps, of spaciousness. Simple, yeah? It's very simple. All you're doing is you're turning inside, you're listening, observing, and you're letting yourself off the hook with having to do anything. Your thoughts get speedy or racy, you could just say hello thoughts and then again come back to the breath and the overall sensations of the body. And as you're with yourself like this, I'm going to give you a short phrase, and I'd like you to notice what arises as you hear that. Just have to listen to it. I'll repeat it 2 times, and you can just notice how it arrives in your body as you hear these words. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. So notice what happens there. Is there a sensation? Is there a word? Is there an argument? Do you take it in and feel warm about it, or do you push it away? Notice that experience. And then just let that settle. Again, noticing the interior landscape of now. And then perhaps as you're transitioning out, just notice you're beginning to either cast your eyes open or lift your gaze. Notice as you're coming back to your talk, to your screen, or wherever you are, what that's like. Are you perceiving differently? How are the colors and the light and the shapes in front of you? Perhaps there's a little resonance of that statement I gave you, of a thought or a, that's interesting that I had this experience. Just notice if you can recognize that you just made a state shift. You made a state shift from ordinary consciousness to mindfulness. You had a little experience. And then I asked you to make the state shift back into ordinary consciousness. So notice the quality right now as you're entering back into ordinary consciousness. What's different? And I'm going to take about 2 minutes of I would love to hear a couple of people, some feedback about that. Colleen, can you ask people to call in or put their hand up?
Yes, please to put your hand up. And if you're on Maestro Conference, press 1 on your telephone keypad. And if you're on the webcast, please type directly into the box. And we'll start with, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Sheila, you have the mic.
Hi, Manuela.
Hi.
Thank you for that.
Okay. What was your experience?
Well, when you spoke it, and I've been listening to you for a while, so I feel like there is some basis of connection. And so I was able to receive it. In fact, I consciously tried to imagine my heart opening before you spoke. And then I noticed right away a smile came to my face, and I usually don't smile with my teeth because I'm a little self-conscious of my teeth, but up went my lip. So it was super real in terms of the smile, and it just stayed there for a while. And then I just noticed my whole head angling, starting to look up, and really almost felt it go down like I was having something yummy to eat or something. So it really landed.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was really warm and
really warm and nourishing.
I didn't really want to leave. I didn't want to leave that state actually. So I took some time to come back.
That's wonderful.
You.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. That's great. Thanks, Sheena.
Bye.
It's wonderful that Sheena shared that. There are two responses that we usually have. We have either the kind of nourishing, like yummy, I can take it in and it feels so right, and it opens up into the more deeper layers of our own warmth, which we kind of just heard from Sheena, which is wonderful. It's fantastic. Yeah, we are a nourishment-based psychotherapy, so it is wonderful when that happens, and it begins to make the client more trusting and open and more relational, which you could hear right away there from Sheena. And then we can also have a very different experience where we can push it away and go, oh no, I'm not welcome, and I'm not welcome in the world at all, and nobody likes me. And that is beginning to unearth core beliefs that we hold more deep inside, right? So your welcome here is a rather neutral statement, and it's a truthful one from me actually. But it can have a very different feel if the core belief is I am not welcome in the world, then it's going to rattle the belief cage, right? Is there anybody else that wants to share?
There is from the webcast.
Okay.
We have a sharing from Anne, And she says, I felt my chest relax, a letting go, and a warmth there.
Wonderful. So another kind of nourishment happening there. So the welcoming was kind of basically going in, and there's a warmth about it and a deepening. Wonderful. Very, very good. Good. Any others there, Colleen?
No others at the moment.
Okay, great. Then I'll move on. I know we could, and you're getting the flavor a little bit, and you're going to have that in the class. We're going to do those experiential pieces with you and little live demos we're going to do with you. So in the class, we're going to give you the Hakomi experiences. But really what you got here was a taste of how we work in Hakomi. And if you go to slide number 9, the crane, by the way, is the symbol of Hakomi. That's why I put that in here in this particular presentation as a visual. The crane symbolizes mindfulness and contemplation, and it's also a very relational bird. So you'll see these 2 boxes and 2 circles there, and the outer box is the healing relationship, which I already talked about being the loving presence. And it's the kind of warmth that I already talked about. So we hold the client in healing relationship. We hold them in loving presence, and we actually have some things to do there. And you're going to learn about the technique of contacting. I'm going to teach it to you in the 3rd class, which is how we facilitate the healing relationship. And there's also a lot of nonverbal awareness. So we do a lot of tracking, which Rob is going to talk to you next time. We track a lot for the signs and indications, so when the person is relational and when the person is not. And you could hear it in Sheena when she was sharing. The tone of her voice had a warmth, and obviously she spoke of a connection and a warmth, but it was also in her tone of voice and how she talked about it. There were like hmms and the way she kind of elongated some of her words. So even by listening to her voice, we can hear how she was connecting in. And those are what we call indicators of the voice of the person is beginning to open up and they're dropping into trusting the relationship. And in the healing relationship is absolutely critical. If we don't have the connection and the safety in the relationship, everything else that we're initiating in Hakomi won't really take hold. Because if we're not safe, we don't open up. If we don't safe, we don't learn how to trust our own bodies. So we spend a lot of time in Hakomi establishing the connection and the right connection so that the client can actually drop into their core material, because it's very sensitive, and it's very painful sometimes. So the conditions of trust and safety and calm and lovingness need to be there. After we've established a healing relationship, we drop into the deeper layer, which is the next box, which is mindfulness. So what we just did in our little experiment. So you can begin to turn inward, and you're beginning to draw your intention into the present experience moment. And you're shifting away from the ordinary perception into the extraordinary perception of yourself. And mindfulness is the tool that we do it with, right? So we're beginning to teach the client, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. And again, I'm going to teach you some tricks in the 3rd class about how we do that. And then we need to what's called stabilize that state of consciousness, because people will turn inside and then they pop back out. It's very, very common. So we have some tricks on how to keep people immersed in the mindfulness. And that immersion is very critical for the next one. Then we go into what we call little experiments. So I just did a little experiment with you, which was I asked you to turn inside. You went into mindfulness. I had you stay there a little bit. And then I gave you what we call a probe. I gave you a neutral statement. And then depending on where it lands in your universe and how you process it today or in your core material, it will either create this nourishing statement that you take on and take in, or it will create this ripple where you're now unearthing the mistrust of anybody welcoming you. And then when we have that, we really are beginning to look at the core beliefs and how the person is organizing. So this is the self-discovery process. So this map I just gave you is kind of the meta map of how we go towards these core beliefs. We establish the healing relationship, we bring the person to mindfulness, we create some experiments, and then the self-discovery begins. In the next chart, there's a HACOMI simplified flow chart, and we're going to be spending, a lot more. And I'm going to actually skip that right now. I'm going to ask you to come to chart 11 because time is running a little bit away from me. As you can see in the chart 11, it says stages, states, and the flow of a HACOMI session. I'm going to give you this overview, and I know you're going to get way more of that. But if you see this U shape, and at the two ends of the U shape, we have the ordinary consciousness. And it's the beginning of the session and the end of the session. And you see the arrows at the side, which safety and loving presence is there at all times. So we locate ourselves in the loving presence relationship. And from the moment we greet our clients, we are tracking. And tracking is this observing, very fine observing of what's occurring in the client in terms of physical cues, what they're saying, how they're saying it, and small autonomic nervous shifts, which I'm going to be telling you way more about in the trauma class because that's really where it's at with trauma. So in the ordinary consciousness, if you follow that little U shape as if you're going down on a little slide, you see on the left-hand side accessing. And so what we do is we shift from ordinary consciousness, and we do that pretty much within the first 15 minutes of a session. We begin to shift the clients very actively from ordinary talking into a mindfulness awareness. Because we believe that if the client is just talking about this stuff, it's not really going to drop them into the depth of their experience, and they're not going to really discover something new. They're going to basically reaffirm the worldview that they have. So the whole HACOMI method is really based on shifting the client's internal reference points so that they are, A, beginning to study their core beliefs, but then also begin to have a new experience. That's what we're after. We're after having a transformational experience that shifts the client into some new reorganization of those core beliefs. We're wanting them to have a real life in the session experience because we know that experiences make the shift, not talking about it. I cannot talk about my past and expect a shift. I can have insight, but I cannot really expect a shift. But if I'm in my present moment, moment-to-moment unfolding of experience, I am with the experience, and that's where the shift can happen. And that happens only when I shift my point of reference, which is mindfulness. So the client is now in mindfulness, and then we're beginning what's called accessing, which is a tool where we're directing the client deeper and deeper into the present moment experience. They are very targeted questions, and they are very targeted what we call commands that allows the person to stay in the experience. So for example, if I would have asked Sheena to stay with that warmth and how it opened up in her chest, that would be an accessing moment. I would say, what kind of warmth was there? How did you experience it in your chest? Where in your chest did you experience it? Was there a color that goes with it? Did you have an image that was arising? Or is there something happening right now as you feel into that chest right now? So we go into the present moment exploration. And that's really where we're beginning to go towards this unconscious material, and it becomes conscious to the client. Sudden memories can come up, images, associations, strong feelings might arise. And we're going then, as you can see, the dip goes into the more depth. They're going into the processing and studying the core organization of experience. And the client might not be fully cognizant of all that's happening, and the therapist is really shepherding them deeper and deeper into the experience and trying to help them to stay with it. As the client stays with an experience, it unfolds and unfolds and unfolds like the babushka dolls, and the client might access a child state. An earlier time might arise, and they feel like a teenager or a younger child gets accessed. There might be strong emotional feelings, which we call riding the rapids, perhaps grief or sadness or anger or any of those strong emotions might come up. Core beliefs might surface, of really feeling and sensing into the inevitability of nobody loved me ever and so I'm not welcome, that solidity of mind and solidity of belief will arise in kind of 3D. And then also trauma states arise. So the dissociations or the traumatic memories might arise, or the unfinished psychobiological responses in the body might arise. So in the depth of that pit is really where we're steering the client towards, because what we're doing is we're having the client go in it in the moment-to-moment experience, but not just to re-experience it. What we're after is a shift, a change, something new. And we begin to experiment. We propose experiments. Like the probe I was giving you earlier, that's an experiment. We have techniques where we're taking over maybe perhaps a tightness in a shoulder. Or we propose a little action that they haven't done before. So we begin to, like a scientist, we begin to look at the core belief, but we're kind of mixing in a new ingredient, which is, let's play here. How about we try this? And so the client begins to add their core belief, to shift and experiment with this, and it begins to create a new experience. And so then we're moving into the transformational phase. And in the transformational phase, this newness begins to manifest in maybe a new thought. Perhaps a big breath is coming through that they hadn't felt, or a grief that was really stuck and lodged deep into the chest is now releasing and it feels freeing. Perhaps they're seeing an interconnection of where they have been and where they are now. So it could be, the transformation can be many, many different things. It could be a big aha moment, or it could be very subtle. It could be a sensory shift in the body that, wow, in this moment I actually feel safe. I never felt safe before, but right now I feel safe. So those are usually very profound moments because they're not coming from the mind, they're coming from the body. They're coming from a very deep understanding of the psyche and the body in tandem. And so that realization, that transformation has staying power because it literally rewires the mind and the brain. As we know, if we have new experiences, novel experiences, there's a rewiring in our neuronal network. And we're perceiving a completely new universe from the depths of our core. And that is very powerful. After the transformation, we often do another little experimenting. And we're kind of like, again, like a scientist, we're kind of testing if that new belief or that new perception has hold. And then we're beginning to slowly move out into the integration phase. And in the integration phase, we're kind of putting things together. We're understanding it. We're looking at how do you want to take it out into the world, what do you need to do now that you feel safe, we're just kind of designing the first next step for the client. And in the completion, we're beginning to wrap it up, bring the person back into ordinary consciousness, because it's kind of very hard to bring the client into mindfulness out in the world. So we're making sure the person is grounded again and in their body before we send them out. So I want to jump over the next slide, 12, is basically what I just told you in a more linear way. And I also told you about slide 13, the loving presence and how important that is. And the one word I want to say about that is that loving presence is really about attuned attachment. A lot of clients have attachment issues or relationship issues, and so the loving presence in which we hold the client is very, very healing towards those attachment wounds. We already talked about applying mindfulness, and the definition here in slide 15 is that mindfulness is a state of consciousness that allows for a non-judgmental witnessing awareness of the present moment. So it's the state of consciousness that we're using that allows us to witness our experience without any judgment. And it's the witnessing of the present moment, right? And so I'm going to jump to slide 18. We're using mindfulness as a state of the client to cultivate this witness so we can engage in this self-reflective self-contemplation. And in fact, the therapist does this too. So we need to be mindful as well. I can't just be rushing through the session. I need to be mindful as well so I can catch the indicators, I can catch what's happening in the relationship, but I also can catch my own countertransference. And that becomes very, very critical as you're going into the more in-depth work to work with oneself. The focus in mindfulness is on self-study. Ron used to be fond of a phrase called assisted self-study, that we are assisting the client in studying themselves. And mindfulness increases also the body awareness, right? And it also informs interventions. What are the organizing beliefs? What needs to happen next? In mindfulness, we begin to really understand it on a more embodied way. In slide 19, there's a slide on how we use mindfulness in the body. We are always working towards the safety and resource, and I'll be talking to you way more about how to be using somatically resource when we're talking about trauma, which becomes very critical. But the idea is that we don't want the client to be pushed or prodded in any way. We're really unfolding the process in the safety and in the kindness of mindfulness, so the client can, what my favorite word is, to metabolize and be with the process that's unfolding. So new information can be noticed. Sometimes it's incredibly subtle, the new experience that comes in. It's literally a shift of thought. And to recognize that, you need to be really slowed down. When we're doing the experimenting, the mindfulness and the awareness of body is critical, because the client needs to be feeling the experiments and being with it again in a safe way and have their curiosity engaged. In slide 20, you see the session again, what I've just been talking you through in the 15-minute segments. So on the right-hand corner, we start the first 15 minutes with making the contact and establishing the healing relationship, and we're tracking for the themes of the session. Usually a client reveals their core themes for that session within the first 5 to 10 minutes. And we spend a lot of time tracking for those themes that we're then basically unpackaging for the rest of the session. In the next 15 minutes, we go into the accessing, and we're deepening the client into the material, and we're studying it. So this is we're opening it up, we're studying it, we're doing experiments. This is the mad scientist phase. And then in the next 15 minutes, we're going into the processing. Whatever needs to be healed, whatever needs to be addressed, whatever needs to be shifted happens in that quadrant. And then the final 15 minutes is the integration phase. So we're needing to stitch it up, and we need to make some kind of sense of it. And it doesn't mean that it's done. Obviously, it's, sessions go over many, many weeks, months, or even years. We can look at the stages of the process as one session. We can also look at it as the course of the therapy. But it's very important to have an integration phase and stitch the themes and have the client make sense of what they've been discovering today, especially when it's on a very physical level, sensation level. Clients often swim a little bit, and to say, we started with this theme of safety, and you went through all these memories, and we kind of discovered this belief where you felt not safe with human beings. And look at it, we went through the shift where you had this little moment where you felt a safety and warmth in your body. What do you make of that right now? That will be an integration question. So I'm summing it up for the client, and then I'm having an integration session to make sense of it. It's not about a solution. It's about kind of giving the client an anchor. Because if they're going outside and they're feeling like, wow, I had this embodied sense of safety today, that is huge for somebody who lives in an awareness that the world is not safe. And so anchoring those experiences are very, very important. So I kind of said a lot of the things. I'm going to highlight one more, which is slide 25. In the processing phase, we're going towards providing a safe missing experience. We're very keen on, and this is where I said earlier, we are nourishment-based therapy. We're looking for opportunities in which we can provide a corrective, or what we call missing experience. And it could be, if it's nobody was ever welcoming, but looking in your eyes, I feel very welcomed, or hearing a nourishing statement, or having a memory complete. We're looking for the incompleteness of the person's experience, and we're looking for opportunities in an experiential way of how to create those missing experiences. And they're often of kind of very nourishing nature. The other charts I'm going to, after that, 26, 27, and 28, are really the same kind of map that I've been talking to you about, just in a different configuration. One has a more like tree-like, so you can see that there's a 26, a doing aspect of the method, and then there's the being aspect. We're big on differentiating doing Hakomi and being Hakomi. So much actually, and the bottom, the roots of the tree that you see, the being, is very much about the implicit memories, the unconscious that we can't have access to. It's also the body feeling and the trusting of the process. So it's what we're not fully seeing. It's the roots of, but it nourishes the whole tree. And if the child operates on or we have trauma memories that are operating on limited core beliefs, it's going to nourish the tree in a very poverty kind of way. So the way of working into the being states is really making those beliefs conscious and expanding those beliefs and expanding choices. I'm very big on offering clients choice points. So we want to make the implicit explicit. We want to make it conscious. We want to bring what's unconscious and what's hidden and what's not known and what's not understood conscious, so we can make some new choices and transform those core beliefs. And the other maps are really, in 28 there's a map, again, the normal consciousness and mindfulness, and then there are two other maps that inform the method, which in this course we really don't have time for, but we have a map called the sensitivity cycle or barriers map, and it looks at where are the barriers or the stopping points in which the client doesn't have insight, or where they can't nourish themselves, or where they have some difficulty finding a response to an action, or where they don't really take in the completion and relax in the fruits of their efforts. So there are barriers that we can put into ourselves in our process. And Hakomi has this map, and we understand those barriers and have techniques how to work those barriers and have the client move through that. Another big map that informs the work is the character map, which has a rich tradition from Alexander Lowen and Reich, and many other somatic therapies have it as an underpinning. It's basically a developmental map based on developmental milestones and wounds and the coping mechanisms, which we call character development or character identifications. And they're based on the woundedness and then how we've learned how to cope with it. So for example, the client I've been kind of talking about here, the client that has maybe an issue about feeling safe, we would call it the sensitive withdrawn. The old terminology is schizoid. And the sensitive withdrawn person has a woundedness about their very basic belonging in the world, and they have learned to withdraw from the contact of the world and begin to create coping mechanisms to maybe limit relationships or pull themselves away out of relationships or not even get into relationships. So it's a coping mechanism to avoid going back into the woundedness of not feeling to belong. So those character maps, it's a very intricate map, a very powerful map. If you're not familiar with it, I highly encourage you to study it and to learn it. It's a very powerful map to understand developmental wounds and trauma, and also how people create these responses to those wounds, because once you understand people's coping mechanisms, you don't take it very personal. And you understand somebody's anger or bristliness or irritation or withdrawing or fear, you understand them within that frame, and when you understand it, you can be very loving towards it, and then you don't get into the countertransference. It's a very, very potent map to get. Okay, the other pieces again are just the same map, just differently. You can I really encourage you to go over those and look at them and read them and internalize it a little bit for you to understand the methodology. So I'm going to make a shift right now. We're almost done here with our time, and I want to leave a little bit of time for you to ask questions about any of this, what I just talked about, and then I want to guide you through towards your deepening practice, and I'd like you to hang out with each other after the class, after I get off the phone. So are there any clarifications, questions, comments?
Yes, there are, Manuela. I'm just going to remind everyone as well, if you'd like to comment and you're on the webcast, please type directly into the box. And if you're on the telephone, please press 1 on your telephone keypad. And we'll begin with a question from Roxanne from the webcast. How is this process different from hypnosis?
Good question, and I probably will answer it very poorly because I'm not trained in hypnosis, so I really can't comment on it, but what I understand is we are not hypnotizing. We're not when we're talking about a shift of consciousness, of mindfulness, the person is very, very present, and I'm not doing anything to the client in that state. So I'm inducing them into mindfulness, which, by the way, is a natural state of our awareness. And they're using that state to study the experience. So I'm not in mindfulness making any suggestions or guiding them, and they're not being present with it. As I understand hypnosis, the person goes into hypnosis and is not fully conscious when they're getting suggestions or orientations by the hypnotherapist, and often don't even remember what has been said or has been done. That's very, very different. But again, I'm a complete novice to hypnosis, so please forgive me if I'm butchering the hypnosis work, not meaning to. But what we're using mindfulness is that we're just shifting the reference point to the talking and talking about into a body awareness, a slowed down awareness, so the client is actually catching up with what is actually occurring in the moment. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And still no callers with comments, but I do have some sharings from your question earlier as well.
Yes.
And actually there are more questions, sorry.
Well, let's go with a question that's more important for right now.
Okay, well, I had one participant that really wanted to make sure I shared this with you. So Karina wanted you to know that the first word that you had given her earlier made her feel welcome, for real. And the second time, she felt that she was in a loving circle of people.
Oh, wonderful. Mission accomplished. Good job. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jason is asking, where, if at all, is the role of intuition on the part of the therapist in HAudio?
The room of intuition, or what was the word?
The role.
The role. Oh, yeah, the role of intuition, big time, yes. Intuition, in my view, great question, Jason. The intuition, in my view, is very precise, actually. It lives, I think, in the body and in the awareness of the therapist all the time. The more the therapist practices mindfulness and body awareness, the more intuition will become more precise. I don't think that intuition is very amorphous at all. I can tell you I've been a meditation practitioner and a somatic practitioner for over 25 years, and I can sit with somebody and get very precise, direct information from my body in relation to the other person. And it's because I have done my own practices and can feel when I'm clouded, or when I'm not really present, or when I'm preoccupied, or when I'm very open to the other person. And I can pick up information. So, for example, what we call projective identification in psychology. If the client is, let's say, they're emotionally very closed off and kind of pretzeled inside, and they have their jaw kind of jutted forward, and they're kind of clenched, and the muscles are very bound, and it looks on the outside, they're kind of angry and mean. But in my gut, I feel this quiver of fear. And because I have set in mindfulness and practiced my meditation in the morning, I can feel this quiver, and I know it's not mine. We call that projective identification. We also can call it intuition, because the exterior presents itself as angry, but underneath the client is absolutely terrified, and I can feel it in my own body as a quiver. So the way I use it, I might say, looks like you're really mad right now, and I wonder if there's another feeling that's also there as well. So I'd be using the information that I'm getting from my body and offer it to the client, but listen to the quality, which is and I wonder if. I'm not saying, you know what, you're angry and really you're fearful underneath. That'd be very aggressive, yeah? And that'd be telling the person the experience. What we do, we offer it, because the client might say, no, there's nothing underneath, I'm really, really mad. And then the curiosity, we can say, is with the anger. I will follow that because that's in the awareness of the client. But perhaps today the client says, actually there is something, but I can't really feel into it. And then I might say, I wonder if you can just put your awareness into your belly for a moment and just see what there is. Again, I'm using from my own, and by the way, this is a very sophisticated question already. You're jumping ahead to class 25. is that I be using the reference for my own body and offer it, and then the client goes, you know what, there is some sensation right there, and I don't know what it is, but it's really scaring me. So here we can say we're using intuition as an offering, and we see if the client's awareness can catch it. And in fact, we often offer things just slightly outside of the client's awareness. We make those offerings that we track, that we notice from the internal experience of the therapist, but most importantly, we look for the raw data of how the client is presenting themselves, and we put those two together. So the quivering in my stomach that I identify as fear, and the external cues of the client, I put that together, and then I make these offerings, I make these statements, and I offer them as a, you can leave it or you can take it, and see where the awareness of the client grasps it. Very good question. That's really the in-depth of the work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There was a question. Sorry, I closed my window box by mistake. I got very excited by your last answer. One of the participants had said, here we go, I'm getting it up now, said they were very, very excited to work with you and HACOMI with traumatized persons. And this is from Jeff. Many of mine are military.
Oh,
thanks so much.
Okay, great. Wonderful, yeah. I think wonderful. I look forward to hearing about what you do with your patients there. And there is a trauma class that I'm offering in this course. And the HACOMI method in particular, I think because it's so gentle and so kind, what I haven't really talked about, which you're going to hear a lot about, is we work with yielding the resistance. And we do it through the kindness and those offerings and these techniques that we're going to be teaching you. And it works very, very well with people who are traumatized or people who are not used to therapy or feel stigmatized. And often that's true probably for the population that you're working with, Jeff, feeling like embarrassed or ashamed to, quote, have a problem or have PTSD. And to be working in the HACOMI way is very potent because it's so respectful and so working with the pace of the client and respecting who they are. We're not sitting there as experts and telling people what to do. We're discovering together what needs to happen in terms of healing. And I think that orientation itself is so powerful when you're working with trauma, because every trauma client, and I'm really in that camp, has incredible wisdom about the trauma they suffered. And they've just gotten very stuck with their symptoms and their pain and their fear and all of that business, and that's what we're here to help them. But they have seen and heard and experienced something that is incredibly powerful. And in trauma, we refer to that as post-traumatic growth. So I have a very positive view on trauma, although it's a very kind of dire topic. But I have a very positive outlook on what the trauma sufferer has gone through, and I always kind of hope to bring that to them and hope for them to connect to that as well as they're going through resolving their trauma memories. I look forward to talking to you about that. Okay, I'm almost at the time boundary, and I wonder, Colleen, is there anything pressing? Because I would like to shift to the setting you up for the deepening practice.
Well, we just have some more sharings. I'll ask perhaps for any other questions they could send in next week. But I also always send a copy of the webcast questions just for perusal for the faculty.
Okay, great.
So
and also there's a Facebook, by the way. Yeah.
And there is the course community group as well, which I'll go over. And it is that we are at time, and I know that you want to lead them into the deepening practices as well. Yeah. I do have a couple of small announcements, like about the course community group. Would you prefer that I do that first before you lead them into the deepening practice?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, because then they won't have to hear all of that little information. So I did want to let everyone know that you can join the course community group, which happens to be on Facebook, and you can find out how to do this from your course homepage. On the left-hand side, there's a button. It's a light blue button, And there it will tell you how to join the course community page. And after next week, we will be making the course community group secret. At the moment, it's closed, which means you can still see the name of the group, which allows you to request access to it. It's much simpler to do it this week. I'll just give that tip. And I wanted to let everyone know that as well. In the U.S., or at least in California, we'll be changing our clocks. So as of this coming weekend, we'll be changing back 1 hour. So please make sure you check for next week in case your time zone hasn't shifted yet or already shifted. Please check that out before we begin for next week. And also, as there will be breakout groups, if you are on the webcast, please note that you cannot join a breakout group from there. So you may want to come over to Maestro, and you can do that by finding your call information on the course homepage. Again, everything is from the course homepage. The audio will be available normally within 24 hours, and the transcript normally within 7 days from each session. Back to you, Ms. Bala.
Great, thank you. Okay, what I would like to do is I'd like to guide you through a short mindfulness experience, and then what I'd like you to do is meet each other afterwards and debrief and talk about what came up for you in that short exploration. One way to meet each other, but also to kind of get clear. I think it's very helpful when you talk to one another after those experiences and verbalize what your experience was. It kind of brings another layer in, just rather than just doing it by yourself, but actually having somebody else listen to you. So the way I would like to do it is I guide you through it, then I get off, and Colleen, you're going to group people into twos or threes, and then I'd like you to take turns and listen to one another, and each one of you will share. And when you listen, see if you can shift into the loving presence part of yourself. So locate yourself in your heart in a more relaxed place, and really take that person in. And you can ask them, would you like some feedback or would you like some observation? And somebody might say, no, I just want to say it and not, and then please respect that. Or people say, yeah, I'd love to hear what that sounded like, and then you can offer your kindest feedback. So it's not a critique, yeah, it's just a kind of a dialogue and a feedback. But it does help to anchor our experiences when we talk to one another. So, Colleen, you're going to be fine with setting them up afterwards into groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I will ask if you know that you want to stay for the groups. It is always handy if you press 4 on your telephone keypad, and then I know that you want to go into group. So please press 4 on your telephone keypad, and then otherwise, of course, after Manuela shares this, you would drop off the call if you did not want to go into the group.
Okay. So
and just because it's our first week, if you are listening on the webcast, you cannot join this group. You'll have to call in, and there are free ways to call in, for example, the web phone, and that's all on the course homepage on the right-hand side, all the options.
Great.
Okay?
Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is to take a moment again and take a seated position, and we're going to shift into a mindfulness awareness. And so please, again, follow your posture. By the way, you can always lie down, too, if that's more comfortable. If you have any kind of ailments in your back or it's more comfortable for you, that's always an option. But let your body be comfortable but alert. So I want you to arrive in a posture that's relaxed but alert. And then take a moment to shift your awareness from, you've been listening very intently to my talking. I'd like you to shift now to feeling your body, just getting your attention back into yourself. Perhaps casting your eyes down or closing them, whatever feels right. And allowing your breath to be a little deeper and steady, connecting with the interior of your body. So you really are drawing your attention away from the outside world into the interior world, feeling your sits bones or the back on the floor or wherever you're lying or sitting, feeling the surfaces of your body connecting with the chair or the floor. And what I like to do is to kind of breathe into those contact points of the chair or the floor, really breathing into those places as if you're anchoring yourself through the body into the earth. See if you can let your mind be quiet. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of dig up a memory, and for that I need you to be as open as possible and just see what arises in your awareness, in your memory bank as I ask you to go there. So see if you can trust what arises. What I'd like you to feel into is your own heart region. You might want to take a little breath into the chest-heart region. And then I'd like you to remember a time where you had a teacher that spoke or lived from the heart. A teacher that spoke or lived from their heart. Perhaps a spiritual teacher or a mentor of some sort. It could be a family member. It could be anybody. But somebody that you admired that had this heartful quality. They lived from that place. They acted from that place. They inspired you from that place. Take a moment to see and feel that person and feel into what was it about them that is so special, that made them different than others, how they are with you or were with you or how they operated with others. What was that heartful quality? How did that manifest? Feel into how their body posture, their face, their demeanor, their way of being in the world. Perhaps this was a very quiet person, or maybe it was a very bubbly, outgoing person. Just really feel into their personality, but also the way they held themselves inside. What made them special? And what were some of those qualities that you admire about that person? And as you feel into those qualities, perhaps you can feel how it touches you right now, or you feel a tenderness towards this person, or what they opened up in you through how they were with you, or what they inspired you into. And if you could embody those qualities as you're stepping into this Hakomi course, what would they be? What are some of those qualities that you like to embody of that? Your own personal principles, your own personal guidelines of being. And feel into those qualities and really steep in that for another moment to feel what those are and what you would like to cultivate in these 10 weeks that we are together in Hakomi. What is very dear to you and these heartful qualities that you would like to commit to or like to explore or live up to? And it could be a sensation or a feel. Even if you don't have it fully articulated, you can, as you're debriefing with your colleagues in a moment, you can talk about the sensation or the feeling in your body and peel out those qualities if you're not clear about it. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to meet up in groups of 2s and 3s, or 3s, whatever you like, and talk about what those qualities are that this teacher gave you, instilled in you, inspired you to. And then what are you committing to for those 10 weeks that you would like to work on? And they are the qualities in which you're going to rest this work. So spend some time thinking about it, talking about it, and if you want a reflection from your friends to reflect back of what you said, it could be very helpful to hear it reflected back. Okay? So please go into your groups. Colleen is going to set that up with you now, and next week you're going to be meeting Rob, who's going to teach you more about the flow of the process and the tracking skill. Thank you all for listening, and I had a wonderful time being here with you today.